Well, good afternoon, everyone. In the neighborhoods hit hardest by Hurricane Sandy, the city's relief and recovery work continues around the clock and every day, and we're expanding our efforts, and I did want to brief everybody on what we're doing. For nearly 2 weeks now, we've been distributing food, water, and other necessities at sites throughout the hardest hit areas. So far, we've distributed more than 2 million meals, around 600,000 bottles of water, 160,000 blankets, and other supplies. NYC service volunteers are going door to door, and they have reached more than 20,000 people, offering them food, water, and help with cleaning up their flood-damaged homes. We've also sent portable medical vans staffed with physicians around the areas to provide primary care and distribute medicine. And in addition, medical teams are going door to door in high-rises without power to make sure that those who remain in their homes are safe. And we created temporary disaster assistance service centers that have been central repositories of supplies. Today, we're going to talk about something else. Today, rather than leaving residents at the mercy of too few tradespeople to bring back power, heat, and hot water, we are going to work to connect people directly to those and other resources through an initiative that we're calling NYC Restore, which will take our ongoing relief efforts an important step further. We're establishing 7 comprehensive one-stop shops for all disaster-related services in the areas most heavily impacted by Sandy. And these brick-and-mortar recreation centers will build and expand upon the offerings of our disaster assistance service centers. They will connect people affected by the storm to a wide range of emergency and long-term assistance services, and all under one roof. 4 will open today, 1 here in Far Rockaway, as well as sites in Gravesend, Coney Island, and on Highland Boulevard on Staten Island. Another 3 will open later this week. Those will be in Red Hook, Breezy Point, and Throggs Neck in the Bronx. All are in sites convenient to the community, some in converted commercial storefronts like this one we're standing in today, and others in churches, rented office space, and other suitable spaces. Each will be open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. You can find out their exact location, needless to say, by calling 311 or visiting nyc.gov. And we're also passing out flyers in impacted areas to notify people about the centers. We're trying to do everything we can, including giving some of the flyers, describing it to the schools so kids can take it home to their parents. These recreation centers will make it simpler and more convenient for New Yorkers affected by the storm to get the help they need and learn about additional resources they may not have been aware of, all by going to one location. For example, as you can see here, there is a FEMA staff in all of these centers to help people sign up for disaster assistance or check in on their applications, or to sign up for our NYC Rapid Repairs program, which is for New Yorkers whose homes have been damaged in the storm. Small Business Services is also here to help you, along with EDC, to get some aid for your small businesses. NYC Rapid Repairs will send teams of inspectors and contractors to residential buildings to help owners identify needed repairs, make those repairs, and get reimbursed by the federal government so you can get back home quickly. Now, you'll need a FEMA ID to start the process. A FEMA ID number is part of our NYC Rapid Repairs program, and you can get that FEMA number the same place you get other city and federal approvals to get started, at this one-stop recreation center. If you have access to the Internet, you can also get a FEMA ID number and sign up for NYC Rapid Repairs by going online and visiting nyc.gov. But an awful lot of the people that we're trying to help don't have electricity, and presumably online doesn't necessarily help them. But they will read about this in the papers, they'll see our flyers, they'll listen on radio and television if they have electricity someplace or other, and they'll come to these centers and we can give them direct support and help them where if they were on their own out there trying to contract by themselves with a construction company, it would be very difficult. There aren't enough good tradespeople in normal times, and so in something like this, you'd think it would take an awful lot of time to get everybody if they had to depend on their own resources. And what we're trying to do is to circumvent that, pull together great people, and make them available and get this program going as fast as we can. We have an awful lot of houses to get to. It is going to take some time, but we're trying to do this as fast as ever been done before. This program is especially crucial for homeowners whose power can't be turned back on until certain repairs are made. The majority of New Yorkers who remain without power do so not because the utilities can't provide power on the street, but because necessary repairs still have to be performed. So I encourage all homeowners and residential landlords without power to sign up for this program. You can do that by visiting one of these centers, or if you have access to the internet, as I said, nyc.gov. Just remember, if your basement has been flooded by salt water, your electric service is probably compromised, and we cannot turn on electricity until a certified electrician replaces or certifies that what you have is in good operating condition. Salt water leaves a film on wires and on circuit breakers that allow electricity to go around, and they can easily start a fire in your building. And so if the utility is trying to put power down the street, they've got to get into every single building on that street, or from the outside take out your meter, which would disconnect you from the grid before they can turn on anybody else in the same block. I want to be clear that if your home needs repairs, you also do have the option of hiring a contractor on your own and self-certifying through the Department of Buildings. But if you do that, number one, please be aware of scams. Whenever people are vulnerable and in an emergency, there are always others who seek to take advantage of the situation. We don't want that to happen, and that's one of the reasons why we're encouraging everyone who needs repair work done to sign up for NYC Rapid Repairs. Number two, there just aren't that many construction companies and certified electricians, plumbers, carpenters, whatever, available in normal times, and this time is certainly not enough. So we think that the best route for everybody will be to try to go through NYC Rapid Repairs. We'll at least get you heat, hot water, and electricity. Does not solve your problem of replacing windows and wallboard and floors and everything else. But our main concern is to get everybody up with heat, hot water, and electricity, particularly as the weather gets colder. That's our number one priority. In addition, staff from our Human Resources Administration will be at these centers to ensure that anyone eligible for benefits like cash assistance, food stamps, emergency food, or other public health insurance gets connected to these benefits. Staff from the city's Economic Development Corporation and Department of Small Business Services are on hand to connect business owners affected by the storm with the city's package of relief resources, and that package includes emergency loans, free temporary office space, and tax relief. Staff from the Department of Housing Preservation and Development and the state's Department of Housing and Community Renewal will be able to provide information about temporary housing. Staff from the city's Department of Consumer Affairs will provide financial counseling, assistance with insurance claims, and other services. And these centers will also provide assistance to people who need to replace personal records or documentation lost during the storm. A number of other state agencies will also have staff on site to help with issues New Yorkers may be facing, including the Departments of Labor, Insurance, and Motor Vehicles. And so will a number of community-based partner organizations from each of the affected areas. So visitors will not only be connected to city services, but also a range of nonprofits and services tailored to their needs, and that includes community-based health and mental health services. All of these sites, you should know, have staff who are bilingual and all equipped to provide interpretation by telephone, and they are all wheelchair accessible as well. These restoration centers will continue to operate as long as they're needed, and at least until the end of this year. They'll be an invaluable resource for the New Yorkers most affected by the storm and provide a big boost to the communities hit hardest. Step by step, all of these communities are going to rebuild, and every day we are making more progress. I'm happy to report that today we expect the City Council to approve our request for an emergency allocation of $500 million to our capital budget to repair schools and hospitals damaged by the storm. That will take us another step forward. Around 99% of public housing buildings that lost power have gotten power back, including all NYCHA buildings in the Rockaways. There still are 6 NYCHA buildings housing about 1,000 residents that remain without power, 3 in Coney Island and 3 in Red Hook. And the tradespeople who can make repairs or provide temporary alternatives are working as hard as they can. It is dangerous work. It's work that we have to improvise as we go along, and these people deserve a great credit. I don't think anybody could have bought back the hundreds of buildings that NYCHA lost anything remotely as safely and as quickly as we've done. No matter how inconvenient it is for everybody, we are making progress, and we should be done with this pretty quickly. The tradespeople can't be asked to work any harder, and they certainly are the most competent group that I've ever seen. About 75% of NYCHA buildings that lost heat and hot water have now come back, some because of temporary boilers, which we've had installed, and we are in the process of connecting and testing temporary boilers to bring heat and hot water back to the remaining buildings. The boilers have been either delivered or on their way, and as fast as they come in, we can get them up and test them. We turn them on. One other thing, in addition, the odd-even license plate system for gas purchasing seems to work well. Reports are that lines and wait times for gas have dropped considerably, and we estimate now, based on counting by our police department, so we think our data is pretty accurate, some 60% of gas stations are now open, and it's a major increase from last week. And we are continuing the executive order on uneven gas purchasing for another 5 days, and then we'll take a look at it then. But there's certainly no reason to cancel it. Things seem to be getting better, and I don't want to upset the apple cart as we go along. Before turning the floor over to a couple of other speakers, I'd like to thank all of the city agencies and nonprofits who are part of NYC Restore. In particular, I did want to thank Human Resource Commissioner Robert Doar, who got the HRA centers in the Rockaways. Yes, thank you. All of his relatives are here. In the Rockaways, Staten Island, and Coney Island, back up within days of the storm to service the neighborhoods hit the hardest. All while the agencies were displaced from its headquarters in Lower Manhattan. Special thanks also to HRA General Support Services, especially Joe Centino, Gary Gonzalez, and Ray Schmidt, who worked overnight to get this site up and running, and also Lonnie Tanner and Jim Bieber from the Department of Design and Construction, who helped design this space. Let me also thank Navilas Contracting, who provided electrical and cleaning work free of charge to get this restoration center up and running. This company has also pitched in with cleanup throughout the Rockaways, sending crews of volunteers to help clear out homes and streets, restart boilers, and more. Thousands of other New Yorkers, as you know, have similarly come forward to help one another in this need, and the spirit of generosity and community support has always defined New York, and it's the reason we're going to emerge an even stronger city than before the storm. Now let me introduce some of the other speakers, starting with Deputy Mayor Linda Gibbs. Linda.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. And the mayor just took you through an awful lot of work that's been going on to really focus on the urgent first needs of getting power back on, getting heat back on, getting water back on. We know when all of those services are returned to households, the job is not done. There are a lot of needs that continue in these households, from disrupted businesses, lost jobs, discontinued benefits, interruption in services. And our goal by opening these restoration centers is to have a single convenient place where residents of the communities and businesses in the community can come to have those multiple needs met. We did as good a job as we could in identifying what we think the needs are, and we have representatives from city, state, and federal agencies here to address those needs. But if we find out that there are folks walking through the door and they meet with our nonprofit partners who are greeting them, and they say that they need something that we didn't think of, we're going to be nimble. We're going to be able to add additional agencies and additional services, and our goal is that we can minimize as much as possible the efforts that people have to go through to get their lives back in order. There are a range of economic development and social services, health services, and housing services. And we're here to meet the needs as we see them, and we're going to be here until these communities have gotten themselves back on their feet. Thank you.
Linda, thank you. Next, Robert Doar. He's the Human Resources Commissioner and really deserves an enormous amount of credit for getting this going. Robert.
Thank you, Mayor Bloomberg. And on behalf of all the city agencies and our not-for-profit partners, I want to welcome you and the community of Far Rockaway to New York City's first Restoration Center. It's been now 14 days since the beginning of the storm, and during those 14 days, Mayor Bloomberg, you have led an unbelievable response to the immediate needs of people from Staten Island to Far Rockaway to Coney Island, every community that's been hit. Your team has been there addressing the immediate needs of people in need: food, water, clothing, warmth, power, repairs, sanitation. They've all been there. But when the dust settles, the problems and the issues that we faced in the wake of the storm are going to continue for families and for citizens and for businesses and for communities. And that's where the restoration centers come in. to help with the ongoing needs that will continue going forward in the coming days. Every analysis of how to respond to something like this that we've been hit says you have the first phase, you got to deal with the emergency. And then you have the second phase where you continue to provide case management services to people so these communities can truly come back better than they were before. And that's what's going to happen at the restoration centers in New York City. And that's what's going to happen because of your leadership, Mayor Bloomberg, and your leadership of your team. So I want to say to everybody back here, everybody in orange, hip, hip, hooray for the restoration centers. We're ready to go. And it's, you know, it's all not always be perfect every day, but we're going to stick with it until we make real progress here in Far Rockaway. Thank you.
And I wanted to particularly thank, you're nice to say that, but it's the team that's doing it. Clyde Fugate from FEMA and Governor Cuomo have been phenomenally helpful, and we appreciate everything. These are team efforts, and you'll see lots of different levels of government and different agencies working together here the way we should. Before taking questions, let me try to summarize for our Spanish-speaking New Yorkers. Estamos abriendo 7 centros de restauración en las áreas más devastadas por Sandy. Los centros tendrán muchos servicios en un solo edificio, como información sobre beneficios médicos y de comida, viviendas temporales y asistencia financiera para dueños de casa y comerciantes afectados por el huracán. And with that, sir, we'll take some questions.
Mr. Mayor, Rich Lamb, WCBS 880. Are you keeping an eye on what the contractors are charging at the same time? In other words, obviously, if they're working with you, one would assume that they're charging.
Yes, we're going to make sure that they charge a fair rate. Keep in mind they're in business to make a living as well, but we think we can control that better than you can on your own. We have a master contractor over them who's going to look and make sure when they submit the documentation that it's reasonable. And they'll look and contract with each of these people in advance and make sure that they understand what kind of rates they can charge. And if they don't want to participate, then they don't have to participate. Miss?
Where are you getting, I'm sorry, Samantha Liebman, 5S1 News. Where are you getting these electricians and contractors from?
Well, we'll take them from any place in the world if they are licensed to do business here. The task before us is massive. We're still not sure how many houses really need. We can get estimates from 10,000 to 50,000. 20,000 is probably a good number. But until you actually get in and evaluate and see what the damage is, nobody knows how many or how extensive the damage is or how long it's going to take. But we've got to start someplace, and we're starting here now. We will have estimators out in a few days. We'll do some sampling. We'll then try to get to everybody. Where our priorities are multifamily, bigger apartment buildings and houses, because you help more people with one screwdriver than you do with going to individual houses. We'll go to the green tagged houses first, because an awful lot of those may need minimal work to get people up, and then we'll work our ways up the chain. We'll try to do everything in one neighborhood if we can. We're going to wait and see, and we'll even reach out to, if 5 of the 7 people on the street sign up and 2 don't, we'll go and make sure, see if those 2 want to sign up, and or if they're even home, and if they don't want to, we'll disconnect their outside meter so that we can fire up the whole block. Con Ed is not totally done with getting every street up. There's still some streets where the power lines are down, and those will take a long time. Some of those are LIPA installations as well, and they've got the same problems, and everybody's working together. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, could you share some of your impressions of the scene out here in Far Rockaway? There are a lot of residents who are still without power. Oh,
they're going to be out of power. A lot of residents, unfortunately, are going to be out of power for a long time. But rather than complain about it or even write about it, we're trying to do something about it. We can sit around and wring our hands and say it's terrible. Mother Nature brought us a storm. Now we're just going to deal with it, and we're going to go methodically, street by street, building by building, and help people get going. We're going to do the most important, life-threatening things first, and then come back, and we're not going to stop until everybody is back. But we have a lot of businesses that have been hurt or destroyed, and unless those businesses come back, people don't have jobs. We have a lot of stores that aren't open. People aren't going to be able to live in their neighborhoods if they can't shop. There are a lot of schools where we still have maybe a dozen, some number like that, of buildings that will take us a long time to fix, and so we're busing. We actually think we can get it down to something like half a dozen schools out of all of the schools, or half a dozen buildings out of all the schools. But there's still going to be some remnants where it's going to take a long time. There are some places where the damage is enormous, and we can sit around. I want to make sure people are safe. that they're safe from cold, they're safe from disease, that they're protected by the police department. I had dinner last night with some people from 2 different cities in this country. They kept saying, it is amazing. How can you have a disaster like this and have virtually no looting in the entire city? And we had virtually none. There were a couple of tiny little... Only in New York can people pull together the way we have. We have every reason to be very proud. Having said that, there are people who have gotten hurt, and we've got to help them, just the way they would help us. You had a question? Yes, Miss?
Sager, Channel 7. You mentioned the 6 NYCHA buildings in Coney Island. And
yeah, they'll be done, we think, today.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. What is the problem?
The generators are there in this question. Look, our tradespeople can only work. None of these buildings were designed to have an outside power supply. So in many cases, you have to run conduit into the buildings. They're dangerous. A lot of these buildings, the boiler rooms are covered with oil, and they're doing it as fast as they can. And I can tell you, when I've talked to other people who are experts, and not people who just criticize for a living, they say that these people are the best they've ever seen, and they're working as hard as they can. And I don't think anybody else could have brought back this number of buildings in this period of time. And the last few should be done for electricity. If one gives you a particular problem, maybe it could take a couple more days, but within the next couple of days, and we're essentially at the finish line is close for electricity. You're almost there. We're not over it yet, but we're almost there. Heat and power heat is running a little bit behind, but that's because boilers take a long time, much bigger deal to bring in a boiler. Yes, Miss.
Speaking of electricity...
Well, just identify yourself.
Kathleen Horan, WNYC. Speaking of electricity, this morning Speaker Quinn made some proposals for utilities like Con Ed that they bury wires in vulnerable neighborhoods to prevent outages such as this.
Well, I mean, it would be much better if everybody's wires were buried. I don't know where the money would come from. The vast bulk of the people, for example, in the New York region, have overhead wires. In Manhattan, there's virtually none. In parts of Brooklyn and Queens, there are areas where there are none. But then a big part of our city, most of Staten Island, the outer Queens and Brooklyn and the northern part of the Bronx are all overhead. I don't know where the money would come from to do that. And then keep in mind, there's the region, people in Westchester, Nassau, Suffolk. Buried wires are a very expensive thing, which is why the wires are run above the ground. But if anybody can find the money to do it, I think that's great. It's similar to barriers that people are talking about. Is some small areas where conceivably you could put up barriers. It would take billions and billions of dollars. And the bottom line is, I think, if you start to do that here, before the federal government to get involved, you'd be doing it from the Florida Keys to the northern edge of Maine. And building a barrier along the whole Atlantic coast is not something that even science could handle, much less the finances of our government. People just can't do that. People have, for time immemorial, built by the water because it's attractive to live there, and they have suffered storms. That's what nature does by the water, and they have decided that it's worth the risk. And hopefully you can go 100 years without a storm, and then you can have 2 or 3 within a very brief period of time. But that's a decision that people will have to make, and I don't think there's any evidence that most of the people in the low-lying areas here want to leave their homes. They seem to want to stay, and we're going to help them get back on their feet, get them heat and light and hot water so that they can start rebuilding their lives, and then we'll try to work with everybody to find ways so that they can pay for whatever repairs that the government won't pay for. So I think we're my call to go away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, very much.